The Incredible World of Horace Ford was written by Reginald Rose, the scribe behind 12 Angry Men, as a 1-hour live TV episode of a series called Studio One back in the 1950s. It starred Art Carney from The Night of the Meek as the titular character. Other installments of that series were directed by Twilight Zone producer Herbert Hirschman. Hirschman remembered Rose's story from his Studio One days and bought it, thinking it would make a good Zone episode. Thus, it was adapted in 1963, starring Commissioner James Gordon, Pat Hingle, as the main player. Horace Ford is a man-child who designs toys for a living. His boyish personality has kicked into high gear recently as he constantly reminisces about his blissful childhood, so much so that he's beginning to fall behind at work and get on the nerves of those around him. His wife Laura, mother, and friend Leonard are planning a surprise party for his 38th birthday, but it's clear there's something going on with Horace. After an argument with his family one night, he decides to visit Randolph Street, the neighborhood he grew up in, and to his delight, everything is exactly as he remembered it. Kids are running around, couples are happily strolling outside, and street vendors are selling hot dogs for 3 cents. He's taken aback when he spots his old friend Hermie Brandt with a group of kids. Hermie stares directly at Horace, but doesn't speak to him. Freaked out at the ageless anomaly, Ford runs back to his apartment, blabbering about what he saw. His wife and mother think he's starting to lose his mind, and soon, Horace once again returns to Randolph Street. Things play out exactly the same way. Every detail is unchanged from his first visit. This time, Horace follows Hermie and the other kids to see them talking about a birthday party they weren't invited to. They make violent threats for being snubbed. Witnessing this, Horace again runs away. Even more obsessed with what he's seen, he's fired by his boss, Mr. Judson, leading to a huge argument with his wife and mother the night of his surprise birthday party. Overwhelmed and upset no one believes his story, Horace storms off to Randolph Street just before guests arrive for the celebration. I really want to like this episode. I think it has an interesting moral that wasn't explored all that much in the Twilight Zone, and there are scenes that I enjoyed the visual appeal of. But it really all comes down to how much you can stand Pat Hingle's performance.
Boy, I love cat pistols. And they got a great smell. Smell it.
Apparently, his turn as Horace Ford was well reviewed. I just never could get on board with it. No one would want to tolerate this guy. He'd have no friends, much less a wife and boss that permit his incessantly annoying behavior.
His favorite thing was Shakespeare sucking ear.
Well, the eyes don't have to light up.
Sure, the eyes have to light up. What, do you want to ruin the whole thing?
And I know he's supposed to be acting like that for the story. The character is basically a kid in a man's body, but come on. There are more subtle ways to play this where he could have come off a little more likable. I don't care how much hidden trauma he has, and I don't want to spend an hour with this guy.
You're almost 38.
So what?
You don't act 38 sometimes.
So what?
What was the point in shouting at my secretary on the phone?
She was shouting at me.
I'm afraid you can't work here anymore.
All right, then I can't work here anymore. Hey, Mom, you remember Mr. Corey? Bing! Bing! Horace. Bing! Why don't you just be quiet for once, will you?
Unlikable main characters can and have been pulled off well in this show. There just has to be something interesting about them, or they have to be hateable enough for the audience to want to see their comeuppance. Ford isn't really a bad guy. He's supremely irritating, but he's not trying to ruin anyone's life. He's not a villain. He's a delusional man trapped in the memories and behaviors of a childhood he idealizes. So I don't think we're supposed to dislike him. And look, I like Pat Hingle a lot. Of course, I grew up watching him in the Batman movies and would often see him on my many rewatches of Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead, but I don't think he was the right choice to play this kind of guy. I haven't seen the Studio One episode with Art Carney in the role, however, I can imagine him pulling this off much better. If Horace really was written to be this abrasive, then I wish we had more focus on his wife Laura. She does play a big role, but getting more of her perspective from start to finish may have made the Horace character easier to take. Nan Martin, who would later show up in the 1980s Twilight Zone series, does a good job in the part. One thing I don't like about the character's presentation is how the same kid comes up to her door twice to bring back Ford's watch, and she never brings that up as a way to at least consider something is strange about her husband's excursions to his old neighborhood. Maybe she was ignoring it in the same way Horace was shown to be ignoring some things, but I found it odd such a level-headed character didn't acknowledge that until the very end. Ford's mother, played by Ruth White, is an intriguing presence, not only because she looks so young, only 10 years older than Hingle, but because of how the character acts in certain scenes. Whenever Horace brings up a memory from their old life on Randolph Street, she doesn't remember it the same way.
Listen, how come you never remember anything about Randolph Street?
It was a terrible street. I just want to forget it.
In general, Mrs. Ford seems like a pretty normal mother who lives with her son and daughter-in-law. After Horace gets fired for being a complete jerk, though, her demeanor completely changes.
What did I do wrong? Ever. In my whole life.
She's outed as a bit of a selfish, manic drama queen here, and has to be set straight by Laura.
What's gonna happen to me?
Shut up!
This uncovers the probability that she wasn't a very good mother to her son, and may have contributed to Horace retreating to a childhood that he wants to relive in a more positive way. I like that wrinkle to the story, but it's not developed beyond that one scene. Philip Pine made another Zone appearance after his first in Season 1's The Four of Us Are Dying. He was pretty good in that episode, but he's not given much to do here except try to pull Horace out of his childish tantrums. Vaughn Taylor played his fourth of 5 TZ roles in the very sensible and understanding boss, Mr. Judson. Some of his scenes with Hingle are the most frustrating.
I still run this firm, Horace.
You are not taking my stuff!
What employer would allow that? Ford would have been gone from the company much sooner. I think the implication is that his personality has only gotten this bad lately, but he doesn't seem to have any problem insulting his boss. I doubt this was a rare occurrence. Jerry Davis as Hermie Brandt had one creepy stare. They blacked out one of his front teeth for a menacing smile, and the way he interacted with Laura was appropriately unsettling. Even how he turns his whole body like that, it's spooky. This kid did well with his small but pivotal character. The biggest saving grace for this show are the scenes at Randolph Street. They look great and properly capture that nostalgic spirit Horace was looking for. There's almost a dreamy quality to how they play out, and Ford is trapped in the middle of it. At first, he likes to play along, but the more he goes there, the less control he has over the situation. His friend Hermie ominously looks his way, but those kids don't otherwise seem to realize he's there. It's like he's a ghost that some people can see and others can't. This was obviously trying to recreate the youth Horace insisted was so wonderful. It's complete with vehicles from the 1930s lining the avenue. Credit to director Abner Bieberman and cinematographer George T. Clemens for how well that was done. Bieberman would re-enter the Zone for his final 2 episodes the following season. When Horace gets back to Randolph, the events transpire in the same sequence as his previous 2 trips, but now he forces himself to be heard when Hermie and the boys are talking about assaulting the kid who didn't invite them to his party.
Come on, what are you giving me the treatment for?
Will you listen? Will you please listen to me? Well, if it ain't Horace Maxwell Ford.
Why didn't you invite us to your party, Horace Maxwell Ford?
We're gonna mobilize ya!
Horace is now a little boy again, and is brutally jumped by the group of kids. Back at the Ford's apartment, Hermie shows up to deliver a watch to Laura, just as he did the previous 2 times Horace went to the old neighborhood. However, Laura sees the delivery on his 3rd appearance is a Mickey Mouse pocket watch, just like the one Horace claimed to have as a kid. Laura leaves the waiting party and arrives at Randolph Street to see it completely deserted. After a moment, she finds the boy who was attacked face down in an alley. Confused, she turns around to gather herself. When she peers back, adult Horace is in the kid's place. She helps him to his feet, and Ford admits his childhood was actually awful. It wasn't at all like how he remembered it. Picking up his fallen watch, Horace leaves with his wife, moving on from a past that wasn't as rosy as he thought. Hermie hangs out on the light post, watching the couple walk off as Rod's narration completes our story.
Exit Mr. and Mrs. Horace Ford, who have lived through a bizarre moment not to be calibrated on normal clocks or watches.
That 4th wall break isn't quite as freaky as the dummy, but it still gives me the heebie-jeebies. Having him show up in that position at the end of the final shot was an effective way to finish the episode. We also don't know what his true intention was. Was he trying to help Horace accept reality, or just beat up on him one more time? I like those kinds of unanswered questions in my Zone stories. Reginald Rose's original teleplay had a darker ending. It wrapped up with Hermie delivering the Mickey Mouse watch to Laura at the party, and Rose preferred it that way. Hirschman asked if he could make it a more upbeat ending for the purposes of this adaptation, and we got the final scene here. I do like the last exchange the Fords have about how many of us prefer to remember the good times over the bad, sort of editing our own pasts so we could live with them. It's a poignant way to close out, but the darker finale may have worked better. Rose didn't protest changing it since his script already aired on TV the way he wanted it. Several elements and characters in the incredible world of Horace Ford worked to pretty good effect. Nevertheless, I can't recommend it because of Hingle's obnoxious performance. That's just my take. You may not mind it or even really like how he played the lead. From the clips I've shown you, you should be able to make up your own mind on if you want to check it out. As for me, I hope Horace's incredible world is in another solar system, far from mine, in the depths of the Twilight Zone.
We're gonna mobilize ya!